All right. Well, out there in video land, today we are continuing our reading of the canto on suicide, violence against oneself. And we worked on this in the last meeting. So if you have a text of Canto 14 in front of you, we are going to be starting from line 109.
On Canto
13.
13. 13.
Canto 13.
Yes,
Oh,
1 through.
well, I stand corrected. Thank you very much. So if it's Canto 13, oh, well, then that's why I was confused earlier.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
why the quote wasn't matching up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I believe I'm the first reader today. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay. So starting at line 109. We were attentive still unto the trunk, thinking that more it yet might wish to tell us, when by a tumult we were overtaken. In the same way as he is who perceives the boar and chase approaching to his stand, who hears the crashing of the beast and branches. Next reader.
And to behold, upon our left-hand side, naked and scratched, fleeing so furiously that of the forest every fan they broke. He who was in advance, now help, death, help, and the one who seemed to lag too much was shouting, ah no, we're not so alert. Those legs of thine at joustings of the toffle, and then, perchance, because his breath was failing, he grouped himself together with a bush. Behind them was the forest full of black she-mastiffs, ravenous and swift of foot, as greyhounds who are issuing from the chain. Next, please.
On
John.
him who had crouched down they set their teeth, and him they lacerated piece by piece. Thereafter bore away those aching members. Thereat my escort took me by the hand and led me to the bush that all in vain was weeping from its bloody lacerations. Next, please.
O Jacopo, it said, of Sant' Andrea, what helped it thee of me to make a screen? What blame have I in thy nefarious life? When near him had the master stayed his steps, he said, who wast thou that through wounds so many art blowing out with blood thy dolorous speech? Next.
And he to us, O souls that hither come to look upon the shameful massacre that has so rent away from me my leaves, gather them up beneath the dismal bush. I of that city was which to the Baptist changed its first patron. Wherefore he for this. Next, please.
On that account, Mars, with his craft, will make her grieve forever. And were it not that at the crossing of the Arno, some vestige of him still remains, those citizens who afterwards rebuilt it upon the ashes that Attila left behind would have done their work in vain. I made my house into a gallows.
Wow.
Hmm.
All right. So now we'll go back once again to 109, and the next reader will read a chunk of what remains of this canto, and they will stop when they want, and we will talk about that. So who's next?
Where are we?
I guess I am, and as I understand it, Dee Dee, if the question was yours, we're going to go back to 109, and I'm going to read a little chunk, and we'll discuss it. Okay?
Yes.
So it's just kind of like a bit of a replay here. Okay. Let us just. I'm just looking. Sorry, I'm taking time because I'm looking for a break. Okay.
Yes, I have it here. Okay. Thinking the trunk might wish to tell us more, we stood intent when suddenly there came crashing on our astonished ears a wild uproar, as the huntsman hears the boar and the chase dashing down on his post like the noise of a hurricane, with trampling of beasts and all the branches smashing. And lo, on the left of us came two that ran naked and torn, with such a furious burst as snapped to flinders every forest fan.
So two, who were the two?
Well, we're coming to that, I think, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
We're not
Yes,
going
just
on.
little holding us in a bit of suspense here, Dee Dee. But yes, okay. So, oh death, come now, come quickly. Thus the first, and the second, finding himself outstripped in the rush, cried, "Lano, thy legs were not so nimble erst at the jousts of Topo." So in the last push, his breath failing perhaps, he shot sidelong and made one group of himself and a thick bush.
So now there's Death and there's Lano. Those were the two advancing.
Well, no, Death is
No.
one of the two is asking Death to please come put an end to him.
Okay, so there may be another one coming along.
Yeah, I think to say Lano is Arcolani Marconi, and he is with Giacomo da Sant'Andrea.
So those are probably real historical characters.
I have some notes if they would help.
Yes, that would be
Okay.
great.
Let's see where I can pick it up. Lano, together with Giacomo da Sant'Andrea, among those who have squandered their substance. Lano is said to have been a member of the Spendthrift Brigade of Siena and to have squandered all of his property in riotous living. He took part in an expedition of the Florentines and Sienese against Arezzo in 1288, which ended in the Sienese force falling into an ambush and being cut to pieces by the Aretines under Buonaconte da Montefeltro at Pieve al Topo. So that reference to Topo is a location. Lano, being ruined and desperate, chose to fight and be killed rather than run away and make his escape. So he ran fast. Hence the allusion of Giacomo in the text. Giacomo, and not Dante's Giacomo, but Giacomo della Cappella di Sant'Andrea of Padua, the son of Orico Fontana de Monselice and Spiro Nella della Semanini, a very wealthy lady whose fortune Giacomo inherited and squandered in the most senseless acts of prodigality. He is supposed to have been put to death by order of Ezzolino da Romano.
He just to add to that, Lois, my notes say that he had an unfortunate habit of burning his house and the houses of other people to the ground. So presumably those who had their houses burned took some slight umbrage to this and decided that they could do better without him than with him, and that's perhaps why he was put to death.
This seems to me such an obscure reference. Would it have been as obscure at the time when Dante was writing it? Or would everybody say, oh, yeah, I know that guy Giacomo. I know that guy Lano. We remember him.
It was headline news.
Well, I mean, I seem
These
to
were supposed
remember
to be
that.
suicides, though.
Well, I guess Lano let himself be killed, and it sounded like Giacomo just, I don't know.
He was put to death, I think, Dee Dee.
So he's not a suicide.
No,
Well,
because there are two types of people here, I think, and Duncan, jump in and correct me if I'm going down a false trail. But I think there are people who take their own lives, and then there are people who squander their wealth frivolously.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
right, yeah.
So they waste
It's
their lives, the first, and then the others are they waste their wealth, which
yeah, it's like financial suicide.
correct. That's a good way of putting it, Ann. And I
Yeah.
mean, I think for in both instances, why these guys are in hell is something that a 21st century person is going to have to work a little bit to wrap their mind around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you a story. Okay, and the
Okay.
story is I ran into a friend of mine. He's a little bit younger than I am, and he was a little bit down. And we started talking, and he said that his son had gone to a grocery store parking lot and created a ruckus so that the police came. And when the police came, he made threatening gestures towards the police, and the police
Oh, I
shot
know
him.
where we're going. It's suicide by cop.
That's
It's
right.
suicide by cop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that I think that is kind of what these guys are about.
Yeah.
That they decided that life was not really worth living, so they were going to go out in a blaze of glory. In the case of Jacobo or Giacomo, by burning people's houses down in riotous partying, they decided they had to get rid of him. So he was suicide by irate burnt house owners.
If we go back for a minute to Canto 11,
Okay.
where he's where Virgil is telling Dante what's coming. If we can look at line 40
Mhm.
there, um, Canto 11, man may lay violent hands upon himself and his own goods, and therefore in the second round must perforce without avail repent. Whoever of your world deprives himself, who games and dissipates his property. So,
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you said that was around line 40?
Yeah.
yeah, line 40
Canto
of
10,
Canto
did you say?
11.
Oh,
11.
11.
11.
Canto 11. Yeah. Thank you, John. That sure puts it into sharper
Mm-hmm.
focus.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd rather be a tree that's plucked by the harpies than be chased by mad dogs.
Yeah.
Or that river of blood.
Yeah.
So help me out on this. I take your point, and here's sort of supplemental question, as they would say in Parliament. Are these the first people we meet, the first inhabitants of the Inferno, who are really, really, really scared?
Probably not. I don't know.
I can't think of others, but my memory's not so good. Maybe somebody else.
Most of the others have been belligerent or maybe a
Yes.
little whiny, but not.
Yes.
Well,
Or irritated.
well, I've noticed, that the Lano, invokes, he's begging for death. I mean, this is like, you're
Yes.
going to beg for death, and that's an implication of that, I think, David.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. And in reading some of the commentary on this one, it said that really the problem with suicide, no matter which type it is they think that the suicide, whether it's by directly killing yourself or doing something like these two guys, is that it doesn't solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to escape from life in one form or another, and they think that suicide is going to be the answer. But it doesn't work that way, and that's what their punishment is about.
Mm.
It is to point out that, yeah, right. In theory, suicide sounds like a way out, but sorry, folks, it is not a way out. Because you're either going to be a tree or you're going to get chased by wild dogs and killed over and over and over again. So
It
better.
was enough. It was enough to keep Hamlet from killing himself.
Yes. Yes.
But modern thinking is more that suicide is a mental disorder where they're not thinking rationally and they're in so much pain they just want the pain to go away.
Well,
Yes.
that's what suicide has always been about,
Yeah.
although the interpretations are different. The
Hmm.
motivation seems pretty much the same. I'm in pain. If I kill myself, I will no longer be in pain.
Hmm.
And Dante is saying, sorry, it doesn't work.
Hmm.
I suppose that's true in our culture, Duncan. But you've often brought in a sort of an Eastern Japanese perspective, and I know that during the Second World War, it was suicide, especially the people who were able
Harikiri?
to actually with a knife disembowel themselves. It was
Yeah.
seen as a very cultural thing, was it not? That this is what you do rather than surrender.
It was an honorable way out
Right.
on the social level.
Right.
Seppuku. Seppuku. Seppuku.
Seppuku.
Google.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. But then,
It was in the news for a while, suicide bombers, but I haven't seen any of that lately. And then those people who put themselves to death as a protest, burn themselves to death.
mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That happened not too long ago, though. There was
Right.
Yes.
a postal worker. Somebody would
We
set
actually
himself on
had,
fire outside in New York, I think,
yeah,
Out,
we had
outside of the
one in
Trump trial.
Washington.
outside of the Trump courthouse. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the Manhattan
boy.
courthouse.
So that's brand new.
Yeah, that's about a week or two ago.
Yeah, a couple weeks ago.
I had a
Mm-hmm.
really funny thought. This is an aside. The most notorious criminal in the world at this time is running as a Republican for president of this country.
Mm-hmm.
I made the cashier at the grocery store laugh when it popped into my head.
Yeah, but how many people are going to vote for him and are so delighted he's running?
Oh, yeah.
I can't talk about this with some people in our family and some just associates. It's unbelievable to me.
He could win.
Yeah, he could. He could.
I may move to Italy.
Yeah, I'm going to Ireland.
Canada's not good enough. Dave, I thought we were only going to come visit you.
Mm.
So, I just, sort of back to this business of suicide and the point that you made. We're much more, I guess, enlightened or tolerant or understanding of this. So, we had a dear neighbor take her life, and I don't know if I mentioned this in this forum, but I as I describe it, she was a victim of suicide, and she was wonderful. She was our neighbor for 40 years. Our kids all loved her as they're growing up and this sort of thing. And she did take her own life, and we live on a small court here, and it really kind of took the wind out of our sails that this happened. And really, she was good to everybody but herself.
Mm-hmm.
And those of us, like with the case of my neighbor who've been touched by this, I think take a different view than what's in this book, and I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm a little bit more hard-nosed about it, unfortunately.
Okay.
It's a sad story, but when it happens, it's like everybody knows her, carries around guilt. What could I have done?
Correct. Oh, that is so true, Dee Dee. Because and this isn't maybe talked about here, but there's a huge load of guilt with that. My wife, who really, really liked this lady, said, if I'd gone over, I tried a few times to talk to her, but if I'd done this, this, and this, and that's what happens,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and
So
probably
in a
all of us,
way,
right?
yeah, we're all guilty. We're all part of the
Well,
story.
we feel it, it's
Yeah.
It was a big surprise. Big surprise.
yes. Yes.
Very sad, very sad.
Well, yes, and it's pretty much a big surprise because in modern life, almost everywhere is so busy that we're not generally very observant.
Absolutely.
And so people can be in a lot of pain or kind of like I would, Dave, forgive me, I'm going to make an assumption here, which is probably wrong, but I'm going to bring it out anyway. I'm going to assume that this lady was what in Chinese medicine we call an over-mothering type, helping lots of people
Yep.
to the at the expense of her own energy levels, and that she was extremely empathetic with lots of people and would take on other people's pain as well,
Right. And even not wanting to bother anybody.
and not
Yes.
wanting to bother anybody.
Yep.
Yes.
But
You're
I
right.
do understand that when people are close to a suicide, they are at peace with themselves and they can convey it's an like I'm okay attitude. It puts off people who might have interfered if they knew the true depth of the despair. But so there's so many days of just joy knowing that it will be over and that they protect the people around them from knowing what it is going on.
Okay.
Yeah, this is meaningful. If I could go on here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, this is not singular among the chapters we've looked at, you know, like with Paulo, and we keep coming back to Paulo and Francesca, you know. Not that I'm encouraging people to have affairs, but it it seems to be a more, I don't know if I want to say accepted, but it seems to me a more perhaps tolerated part of our lives today, you know. But it was pretty awful back then, and they ended up in hell. And I mean, I guess part of Dante's artistry is we keep coming back to this poem, even though
Absolutely.
in some senses our moral senses bristle at what's happening.
No, I think that putting this in the perspective of, this it's 13th, 14th century, that time when, the church was so all dominating all facets of social life in the West, what we call the West today, that, the concept of sin, especially mortal sin, venial sin, is, in the Catholic Church was also pervasive. There, what Dante seems to be doing here is like looking at this he's certainly giving it another look. And it seems to me that, he is throughout each of these cantos so far, and I'm only 13 cantos, a number of you have read this before, but it seems to me he's drawing in an attempt to draw in this at this time a more sympathetic outlook to say, that these people are still to draw our empathy out in a sense to lift up the people, I guess, in a way, to look at it in a different way, in a sympathetic
Sure.
and compassionate way, which
Sure.
I'm sure it was not. I mean, I think the whole idea of the suicide was like, you were banished essentially, and you were not allowed a Christian burial, as I understand, and
That's
you
true.
would be
Couldn't be
buried in a
buried in the
pauper's grave or
churchyard.
something, and the family would be all shut out. I mean, this is basically not just especially would affect the family. And what a tragedy that would be. There'd be no grieving, and you'd basically have to practically just suck it up and ignore the fact that you've lost somebody through a suicide. I think our culture has completely done a 180 on that and completely rejected that idea. Is that at least the people are deserving of compassion, and if not a Christian burial, but even that is like, I don't think there's any discrimination any longer against suicides in any mainstream Christian churches anyway.
I don't know. In Catholicism, is there?
I
don't
think there
think
is
so.
a concept of this as an illness, which one of you brought up on this call. I think it's seen as a momentary aberration, and you weren't responsible for your act.
Yeah, right. It's
But I
temporary.
think that Dante painted the Inferno so horrible and terrible that people became scared. And from the 1300, 13th, 14th century, from the 14th century on, people was scared about Inferno. So
Yeah, that was
Mhm.
the result of this poem. Yeah,
But in the case here, I mean, I think that Dante also is getting across the point, rightfully or wrongfully, that suicide, whether direct or by killing oneself with a weapon, or indirect by living one's life in a riotous enough manner that somebody would kill them, um, that he's making the point that it's not a solution. That's his
That's a new
point.
insight for me, Duncan.
It's
That's an
not a
interesting insight.
solution.
Yeah. But
Mhm. Go ahead.
well, I guess that does beg the question, though, is what is I mean, I guess what do you think then he's suggesting as being at the foundation of this? I guess it's just not living virtuously, I suppose. And maybe I'm just answering my own question. Not living virtuously.
yeah.
Well, I think, and this is on my mind, been on my mind for the past week, that maybe this time, maybe the next time, each one of these rings has a parallel in Purgatorio.
Okay.
And so, perhaps we can wait until we get to that level in Purgatorio to get to that. But if anybody wants to sneak preview, they can go read the complimentary Canto in Purgatorio
Okay.
anytime.
All right.
So Duncan, on that
I
point,
think that
sorry.
I think that there's actually this kind of dance between the Inferno and the Purgatorio.
The
Generally
structure,
speaking, as a general thing, Inferno are people who are not repentant and they are stubborn in what they have done. And Purgatorio is people who've committed just the same kinds of sins, except they are repentant and they're paying the quote the price so they can move to Paradiso. So I think that's gonna end up being a really interesting process whenever we decide we're gonna do that.
Okay.
yeah. I wonder if
All
Dante
right.
really structured it. Chapter 11 here, chapter 11 in Purgatorio, being balanced.
I think so. But I'm not sure that I'm not sure that chapter 13, take for example, we're in Canto 13 now. I'm not sure in Purgatorio if Canto 13 is the suicide level.
I'm wondering, yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I just looked it up and it's not. I mean, in fact,
Um,
Canto 13 is only the second circle of hell, I think here. The second
um,
circle of the envious. So yeah, it's not, there's no correlation there.
not part of
But
Yeah,
I
his.
mean,
not
I
in the
think, yeah,
numbers, but I guarantee you that there is a suicide level
yeah,
in
okay.
Purgatorio.
Okay, so Duncan, this is where I'm going to kind of stick my oar in, and it's been a while since I've read Purgatorio, so I could be totally wrong.
All
But I
right.
thought the deal was that you had to repent in the world of the living to get to
Okay.
Purgatorio,
Yeah,
and suicide does not permit
that's a
that.
Yeah.
good point.
You
Yep.
know, so I'm not sure. And go. You got something to say? Go.
I think Purgatorio covers the seven deadly sins. I just looked up my notes, which
Okay.
is obviously pride, envy, wrath, sloth, avarice, gluttony, and lust. That's
Okay.
Purgatorio.
Okay. So there's no suicide. I take David's
No,
point.
and your point, Dave, is right that suicide, they couldn't repent.
They couldn't repent because they killed themselves at the end of their
Yeah.
lives.
It's like the unforgivable sin. it's I don't know if that's is that the sin against the Holy Ghost? I mean, that's the ultimate thing of it's the ultimate act of faithlessness in a way. It's just and falling into despair.
Yes. Yes, that's right. I mean, that's my sense with Catholic theology, right? Is that if you commit suicide, you're discounting the healing power of God's grace. Lois, you're from a Catholic background too. Like, is that correct? Is that wash with you?
It sounds reasonable to me. I can't put my finger on any place
Yeah.
where.
No, me neither. But just to move, Anne, I think you said in a previous discussion, and it might have been on Hamlet, was it you who said that actually suicides are now being given in the Catholic Church? They are buried in the churchyard, and they do get a funeral mass and so forth. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
I've heard that.
Yes.
Okay, right.
No, I know of somebody
That's
last
my
year.
understanding too.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
reassuring.
there's a kind of a new modern thing happening with suicide because, of course, if it's a known suicide, there's no insurance will not cover it.
2-year rule.
The 2-year rule, you have to, okay, so
2
if
years
you
after
want to
you took the
commit
policy out.
suicide, you got to get your insurance in line and then wait 2 years.
Right.
It's a long-term plan.
I'm going to teach a seminar on suicide someday.
Well, and then here, I might as well throw this out. Okay, so let's say it's one of these guys, one of the wastrels who decides to commit suicide by neighbors or by cops. But there is a lag time between being caught and when one is actually put to death. And so while waiting to be put to death, one has an epiphany and repents. And yet one is still put to death. So
Correct.
how many angels are dancing on the head of that needle?
That's good. You do though wonder, actually, I mean, to really parse this out, how many Victoria Cross winners are for you Americans, the Congressional Medal of Honor winners, for acts of incredible bravery are just guys who gave up.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is no knowing because of course, who knows what percentages of suicides we don't recognize as suicide at all.
But Duncan, to your point of time to reflect before death, I think hasn't that come up before? Like get your ducks in order long before you face a deadline of death, so that if death comes so sudden and you have no time for conversion to repentance,
Mm-hmm.
But if you repent and you're forgiven, or you demonstrate to God anyway that you are truly remorseful for your sin, that you may be able to get to heaven.
Right.
I think you can redeem yourself at the very last second.
But
think
you
it's
have
never too late.
Yeah,
but
can
you have
always
to
You
redeem yourself.
can, but there's many a slip between the cup and the lip.
Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
the other possibility is if you want to make the 9 First Fridays, where Jesus promised St. Margaret Mary that you'd have a good death if you made the 9 First Fridays. I have all of this stuff from the 1950s training that I have. So this may be no longer a belief, but when I was a kid, it was. And you had to go to church and receive communion 9 months in a row on the first Friday of each of those months.
Okay, now here's a question from a guy who went to a Jesuit school. I'm trying to add up. I might have done 9, but do they have to be consecutive, Lois?
And doesn't have to be a complete mass. Can you show up in the offertory in one mass and the communion in another?
I'm so glad I
You
don't.
better check that one out, Dave.
Yeah, I'm so glad I don't have to worry about that.
Oh, but you didn't have to sit in class and listen to this thinking.
No.
Hour after hour
Yeah.
of parsing all of, oh my God.
And the one thing we can say about it is it kept our wits sharp, trying to parse it all out.
Yeah.
And we
It
all
kept my
turned out
mind going
pretty
as to how to escape.
I think Joyce would agree with me.
All
I
right.
think he learned to reject um, conscience. It, he brushed it off. He would have it, and then he would brush it off because he knew better than to believe what he had been taught when he was young.
Just on a sort of other tack, and this is a point that you raised, John, in taking us back to Canto 11, where the emphasis is on, squandering your stuff, squandering your wealth. It would be very interesting to talk to a Dante scholar and find out if recent scholarship is taking a somewhat ecological perspective on this. Because we have a heightened sense of like not wasting stuff, that fast fashion is not a good thing because it ends up rotting in the Atapaca Desert in I didn't pronounce that correctly, in Chile. And so we've got guys who are wasting their stuff and they've ended up down below. What would an ecological scholar have to say about this? Like, would there be a little nicer fit for that person?
Now, I think there's something we already read that suggests he was aware of that.
Okay.
Something about the filth of the river, the corruption in Florence. Maybe it was later in the poem, but it seemed very ecological.
Hmm. All right. Shall we continue on? So let's see where we're at.
I think we might be at 115.
Okay. Let me get.
I think I read to 124.
3.
Okay.
24.
I believe.
Okay. Now, okay. But we basically concentrated on the very beginning of it, right? In our
Yeah, we
discussion.
did.
So, okay, so they're looking at the trunk, and all of a sudden they hear this thing, and then they see the boar, and there's a chase and crashing. Two guys. One's praying for death, which is ironic. Now help, now help, death help.
Now go to the dogs.
Right, but the guy who's being chased by the dogs is praying to death to kill him, and he's already dead. And the other, who seemed to lag too much, was shouting, Lalo, we're not so alert. Those legs of thine, the joustings of the topo. Huh, he's actually teasing him. So Giacomo is telling Lalo, hey, Lalo, you run a lot faster here than back when we were doing jousting at Topo. And then perchance, because his breath was failing, he grouped himself together with a bush. That's quite an image. So he's running, he's falling out of breath, and he grabs some sort of bush to keep from falling down. Okay, well, this is all pretty well. At this
I
point,
think they're running away from the harpies.
no, they're running away from the dogs.
Dogs, brachs.
She mastiffs, ravenous and swift of foot as greyhounds, who are
Okay.
issuing from the chain. On him who had crouched down, they set their teeth. Oh, I'm sorry, I went too far. So we were up to 124. Who's the next reader?
Anne.
Sir Dave?
And Meisner.
And my
Okay, wait a second. Line 124.
Mhm.
Okay, behind him was the forest full of black she mastiffs, ravenous and swift of foot, as greyhounds who are issuing from the chain. On him who had crouched down, they set their teeth. In him they lacerated piece by piece. Thereafter bore away those aching members. Thereat my escort took me by the hand and led me to the bush that all in vain was weeping from its bloody lacerations.
Hmm?
And well, I'll go on. Jacobo, it said, of St. Andrea, what helped thee of me to make a screen? What blame have I in thy nefarious life? When near him had the master stayed his steps, he said, who wast thou that through wounds so many art blowing out with blood thy dolorous speech? And he to us, O souls, that hither come to look upon the shameful massacre that has so rent away from me my leaves. Gather them up beneath the dismal bush. I of that city was which to the Baptist changed its first patron. Therefore, for this, forever with his art will make it sad. And were it not that on the pass of Arno, some glimpses of him are remaining still.
Let us well finish.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those citizens who afterwards rebuilt it upon the ashes left by Attila in vain had caused their labor to be done. Of my own house, I made myself a gibbet.
So the bush is saying that.
He
Yeah,
doesn't have much sympathy for your man that's been
Gathered them
torn
up
by
beneath the
shells.
dismal
This is
bush.
an answer to I take it Virgil asks, this is a confusing kind of series of verses, to me anyway.
Well, in 136, that's where Virgil asks,
Yeah,
that's where Virgil comes in. Virgil stops and Virgil says, who wast thou that through wounds so many art blowing out with blood thy dolorous speech?
And the bush says he is from Florence. Florence was protected by Marte, the god of the war.
Right, but it's not the bush saying this.
As a soul, the soul.
This is the soul that ran out of breath
Yeah.
and grabbed a bush.
And
If you go back up to 121, 121 through 123, those legs of thine at joustings of the topo, and then perchance, because his breath was failing, he grouped himself together with a bush. So in my mind, I see this person running really, really fast, and they're running out of breath, and to keep from falling down, they grab a bush.
the
So they were
city was,
hiding there.
There's some pertinent Sayre's notes here.
Okay.
Okay, my city, Florence, her ancient patron was Mars. When the Florentines were converted to Christianity, they built the Church of John the Baptist on the site of the Temple of Mars and stowed the heathen statue away in a tower near the Arno. After the burning of the city by Totila, whom Dante, misled by some of the chroniclers, seems to have confused with Attila, the mutilated remains of the god were recovered from the river and set up on the Ponte Vecchio. And, but for this, so the superstition ran, Florence could have never been rebuilt. Even so, it was said, Mars continued to vex the faithless city with continued internecine strife, but Dante may be covertly reapproaching the Florentines with abandoning martial pursuits and concentrating on amassing the florins stamped with the Baptist's image. And the speaker, that's the next note, one that made my own roof tree my scaffold. The speaker has been various identified. Florence seems to have had a kind of suicide wave about Dante's time. His son Jacopo observes that it is a special vice of the Florentines to hang themselves, just as the people of Arezzo are given to throwing themselves down wells. So who actually, who is the me is under discussion.
I guess, yeah, my question is to kind of take this back. Are we talking about, is Virgil posing his question to the fellow who is being ripped apart by the dogs here?
Yeah,
And
that's
so
what I
they're
thought.
taking away his members, or is he talking about somebody else who is the bush? The bush who was blowing out with blood thy dolorous speech. I don't know. It said that the bush sounds like as the one says, "O Jacopo of San Andrea, what helped it thee of me to make a screen? What blame have I in thy nefarious life?" So there's another character here.
There are two men. There are two souls in here.
Yes, two souls, and so one is Jacopo and one is Lano.
Right.
But
But he's
this
talking to the
isn't about
bush.
them. This is about the bush that gets torn apart.
You know, I hear that, and actually Hollander's notes kind of indicates that, but I have to say that I am resistant to that idea. Only because, we have this thing back here on 126 about the person running out of breath and grouped himself together with a bush, which to me means that he grabbed the bush to keep from falling down. And then the dogs attacked him. So I'm not giving the bush the life that the trees have.
Yeah, and I mean, what I read, the speaker has been variously identified. So no one has a certain answer as has come up with as to who is speaking there.
Well, I wonder if another way of interpreting this is rather than saying he kind of like hugged or grabbed the bush, grouped himself together with a bush. I sort of envision maybe more of, and especially with the lines that follow, is that he was changed or converted into a kind of a bush form. His soul became a bush in form, and then that's what was being ripped apart. I mean, we're talking about souls here, and if and the way it was, the bush was weeping from its bloody lacerations. I mean, it sounds like the bush is the thing that's being ripped apart.
Yeah, but if you go down to 133, 134, oh, Jacopo, it said of Saint Andrea, what helped it thee to make of me to make a screen? What blame have I in thy nefarious life? So Jacopo has used him as a screen.
Yeah, he was hiding in the bush.
Yeah, it doesn't mean he's turned into the bush. The bush.
No, he was hiding in the bush, and
yeah, the bush is pleading.
I think, yeah, what he's saying there is because he was hiding in the bush, and the mastiffs came after him. They like tore the bush, so obviously he feels the pain, and he's saying, "Why did you do this to me? Why did you come to my thorny bush?
Okay, there you go.
Could be a tree or a bush.
Okay. All right.
That makes sense.
It's not my fault that you were this person before."
Yeah, the bush is.
The bush or a tree, it doesn't really matter.
And this is interesting in terms of mythology because characters have been turned into trees and probably into bushes. Probably there is some mythological background to what the bush is. I wouldn't be surprised.
Right. Well, Daphne was turned into a tree
Right.
to escape from Apollo, who was trying to impress himself upon her. But at least in Longfellow on line 127, So we got the dogs, and then on 127, on him who had crouched down, they set their teeth.
Because he was hiding in the bush.
He was hiding in the bush.
Because that just game change. The start of the next one, this bush asks them to gather up the leaves that have been scattered
Mm-hmm.
when this happened. So that makes sense.
Mm.
It's kind of ambiguous. It's kind of psychedelic.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Dante was being deliberately ambiguous here.
Okay, so I'm wondering, and I may have missed some of this discussion too because I've been kind of rereading it. Is it that Dante is still by the tree, the trunk that he tore the branches off? Because he wants to ask him another question, but he can't because these hounds are coming and chasing these two guys. One of these guys hides behind the trunk of the tree that Dante has been talking to and ripped the branches off. And the trunk that Dante's been talking to is the thing that chides the guy for hiding behind him. Branches on the ground are the ones that Dante had already torn.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I throw it out there.
It's a more complete scene that way.
Well, if we go back to the first tersima that we read, 109 through 111, we, Dante and Virgil, were attentive still unto the trunk,
right,
thinking that more it might wish to tell us, when by a tumult we were overtaken.
Right.
And even further up, fortune, minus above it a little bit, minus, when the exasperated soul abandons the body, whence it rents itself away, Minos consigns itself to the seventh abyss. It falls into the forest, and no part is chosen for it, but where fortune hurls it, there like a grain of spelt it germinates. It springs a sapling and a forest tree. The harpies feeding then upon its leaves do pain create, and for the pain an outlet. So it seems more likely there's a tree and a bush.
Well, you know, what I would like to do is I would just like to imagine this, that Dante and Virgil are still hanging around the tree that Dante was talking to. And then all of a sudden, there's this big ruckus of two souls running from dogs. And one of the souls runs out of breath and it's not a bush, but actually hides behind the tree that Dante was talking with.
But he grouped himself together with a bush. What about that?
I know that. But if I were to ignore and say that that was a mistranslation and that it wasn't a bush, it was a tree, and it was the tree that Dante was talking to, it all makes really good sense then.
We need the Italian, and
yeah, but hold on. Let me complete this. It makes good sense because then we would have the man who was running, hiding behind, and then we would have the dogs attacking the man and breaking branches off the tree, etc., etc.
They're not leaves, yeah.
So from a visual point of view, you know, that's clearer, etc. Whether that's what Dante meant, I don't know, and I have to go and look. So Decio, are you here?
Yes.
So can you go to the Italian and tell me, is it say arbusto or is it a tree or a bush in the Italian?
A bush.
The name is just a moment. I found it.
But does it really matter whether it's the original tree or a new bush?
A good question.
Well, it does to me for clarity's sake.
Why does it make a difference?
Just a moment.
Just a moment.
Well, I
not
get the
stable.
impression there are a lot of trees and bushes that were planted.
There's a lot of suicides in the forest. Yes.
Chespulio
Yeah,
Chess
what does Chespulio mean?
is this bush.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
the
right.
Italian says Chespulio.
Yeah.
Right, and where's the tree further up? That probably says tree, sapling,
Trunk.
100. A sapling and a forest tree. What are those words in
Fortunes like
Italian?
it springs a sapling in a forest tree. The harpies feeding them. Okay. So a sapling, of course, is a young tree.
And a forest tree.
Pianta silvestre. It's a tree.
Yeah.
Pianta silvestre.
Well, I think, perhaps, and I think I agree with what you're saying here, Duncan, and too, that in a sense what's happened here is that their interlude or their conversation with this tree or bush/bush, whatever you want to call it, has been interrupted by these two characters being chased by this pack of vicious dogs,
Dogs, right.
and they're being attacked and ripped apart. And then, in a sense, they're listening to this interlude, this interruption, and then Virgil returns his attention back to the tree again to say, well, what is it? He wants to know. He now wants to know who were you, the tree? Who were you in your life? And so I think in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 verses here, or canticles, he's describing that, and that he's making some comment here about, which I think is an important comment, which is about he's being from Florence, and which was the city of Mars, and I think Didi's reading here before that I heard was something about that the Temple of Mars had been destroyed by they don't know if it's Attila the Hun or Attila some other Attila, but then it was rebuilt, and somehow the Mars somehow lives on, and then maybe he's the cause of the division or something. Anyways, that he's making some comment here about himself and about his origin in this city. I'm not sure I completely follow what comment he's really what point he's making.
Okay.
Except that he makes his own house a gibbet, which I think is also, or makes his own house a scaffold.
Right, a gibbet is that thing that they strangled people with, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so to answer Anne's question, what difference does it make? If I was making a movie,
You'd have to know.
I would want it to be the tree.
But
Because
the tree the tree is
be
Pier del Vigne, whatever his name is. Is he a Florentine? Because this bush is from Florence.
Committed suicide, so the suicide is very common in Florence.
Yeah, this is definitely a character.
The Cespulio di Hibiscus heterophyllus is a tree with lots of branches, also in the inferior part.
Well, this bush at the end says, "Of my own house, I made myself a gibbet." So that bush is a character who was in Florence.
He's from Florence.
Yes.
Bush, tree, whatever.
Yeah.
So could we assume that actually the bush represents a relatively recent arrival, suicidal arrival?
Yeah.
Well, I think maybe now I think I'm maybe I'm just throw this out here. Does he mean to say that he hanged himself after all this kind of grief came?
Yeah, that's what that's what Sandow says. Sandow is really interesting. He says, "But who am I? Just a loser who hung himself in his own home."
Okay, yeah. I see what you're holding up here, Decio. You're holding up a painting or an engraving of some kind here, Decio, of that tree, or maybe of the gibbet or something here. I can't quite make it out.
Actually, let me put it
If
on
especially if
speaker.
we
Let me,
talk, we could make ourselves a speaker view and see it.
yeah,
Can
if
you
everybody
talk?
else gets on speaker view, Decio holds it up, and Decio is the only one talking, we will see it.
How
So
does that
talk,
How do you
speaker
go
Decio.
view
on
work?
how do you do speaker view?
Talk,
You go
Decio.
up to where it says view up in the upper right-hand corner. It says
Okay,
view,
oh, I see, yeah,
My
and you
book.
click that, and the top choice is speaker.
okay,
So
okay.
put it on speaker. Okay, and now everybody be quiet, and Decio will talk, and the picture will go boom. So talk, Decio.
No, it's just my book, so you can see the
Okay, turn
Yeah,
it, turn it.
it's sideways. Turn
Now
it
it's upside down.
keep going. There you
There,
go.
there.
There.
Talk, Decio. Decio, you have to talk.
This is my book.
Ah,
Is a translation from Italian to Portuguese.
aha,
Wow.
We have
that's
in Portuguese
fantastic.
and Italian. One column for Italian, one column from Portuguese.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's
Looks
fantastic.
like there's a bush
Illustrated by a French
there.
one is Gustave Doré. Gustave
Oh,
Doré.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Gustave Doré, yeah, yeah.
It looks like there's both a bush and a tree in that picture.
Does, and and the bush is kind of inside the territory of the tree.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess we
Can I read
run out of time.
Sandow's last paragraph is pertinent to the discussion. So the guy has been gutted or attacked by the dogs or something. And then
Mhm.
Virgil stood calmly in the leaves over the wounded soul. Hey there, he said, you're bleeding and gutted, yet you're unable to close your mouth. Who are you? Or rather, who were you? Thank God you've come to see my miseries, the bush replied. Please do me a favor and shove my leaves, or what's left of them, up against the base of this bush, where my soul is imprisoned forever. I'm from Florence, whose ancient patron was Mars. Later Christians ditched Mars for St. John the Baptist. Mars was pissed and swore a major curse on the city that it would one day fall to ruins. But even after it was destroyed, parts of Mars' statue were found again and set up on the Ponte Vecchio over the Arno River. It's a good thing, too, or else they would never have been able to rebuild anything from Attila's invasion. But who am I? Just a loser who hung himself in his own home.
So,
And you're
Anne, what are you
reading
reading from?
Okay,
Sandel
this is.
Burke.
Can I hold? You see it?
Hold on,
Oh.
let me.
I
My
Okay,
thing.
got to go
Okay,
back to
my
speaker
video.
view, everybody. Go back to
Yeah.
speaker view. And you don't have
we
your
can't see you. Yeah,
I know
there you
my
are.
thing keeps changing. It's got a mind of its own, you guys know.
Okay, there we go. Yeah,
Is this
Sandel
in the
Burke.
this is in the Longfellow?
No. This
No.
is the modern one. Sandow from California, and he sets the story of Dante in San Francisco with contemporary illustrations.
Uh-huh. Okay, so
Mhm.
that's his version.
That's
Yeah.
his version. Yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
you
I
know
think
when I turn my video off, the painting, the drawing there, that's another Sandel Burke.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So I don't know if it blows up when I'm speaking, but his Inferno takes place in San Francisco.
Yeah. And all of the illustrations are, to the point in San Francisco, whether it's Chinatown eateries or
Right.
the city streets or whatever. It's wonderful to read in conjunction with.
Yeah, it's fun, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
fabulous.
It's quite
So
fun.
so helpful to have this particular perspective here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, Sandel's still quite active.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Not
we can't do this by ourselves. There's not world enough in time, but together we can do it.
we are making some progress.
Yeah, we are. It's very exciting, actually.
I have a
Okay.
question. Why does he want the leaves to be raked back together? What does
Because
that
that's his
accomplish?
soul. That's his soul. That's his protective cloak against the world around him.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's see. I think we more or less successfully got through that. Are we ready to go to the next canto?
You
No,
betcha.
we
No.
are not.
All right.
Oh,
Come
wait
on,
a minute.
Dave.
You
Dave,
cannot
I
invoke
heard-
It's
Dave
closure.
making
has a
me.
question. Wait a minute. We need to give Dave his moment.
Old reliable, the anchor. No, and it's actually 30 seconds worth. Part of the brilliance of this canto, I think, is how Dante shows how horrible a death this is, how horrible a punishment. I mean, of all the punishments we've seen, I think this is the one I'd like the least. And we do read in the papers from time to time about children being mauled by dogs. And there was recently a woman in Calgary, which is about a 6-hour drive from here,
Right.
who was out working in her garden, and she was killed by some guy's dog or dogs. And it just strikes me as a horrible way to die,
Yeah,
and a really bad punishment. And
Horrible experience.
oh
Like
my God, I can't believe it.
the victim of a lion or tiger
Right?
getting
Yeah,
torn
Bear.
apart.
hurt by a
Well,
wild
better a
animal.
Yeah,
lion or
something
a
wild
tiger
animal
in
being
some
ripped apart
cases.
by yeah,
Right.
yeah.
You know,
So I just wanted to kind of punctuate that. I just wanted to put an exclamation mark
yeah.
after this punishment
yeah,
because
yeah,
of
yeah,
all
yeah.
we've seen so far, this seems like really horrible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
Yes, I
this, fortunately, she's okay. But a friend of mine, we've been friends for 60 years, and she was in her neighborhood walking her little dog, and a German shepherd burst out of a house and attacked her and her dog and bit her. She got bitten in the breast and the arm, and she said she had a truly out of body experience, that it was so shocking to her.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Yeah, so
I think it's an epidemic. Two people in a co-op I'm part of, within weeks of one another, got attacked and badly injured by dogs. The same kind of attack, just not long ago.
yeah. My attitude is if a dog does that, they are killed
Right.
immediately.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Oh, sure.
one dog was killed and one wasn't. And I don't know the story of that.
Have
Yeah.
a better lawyer.
Yeah, and I was in a park Tuesday, and a little girl went running toward a dog on a leash. She was going to play with it. She was so gleeful. And my friend, who I was walking with, grabbed the girl before she reached the dog.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's too much tension flowing around these days, and
Yeah,
dogs
the
dogs
dogs,
pick up that tension.
absolutely. And we pick up
And
each other's tension.
we pick up each other's tension.
Yeah,
But
I had a bad encounter with a medical provider that made me feel sick for 2 weeks because she was so tense.
mhm. Well, may everything calm down a little bit. Would be very
Let's hope.
nice. All right, Dave, are you satisfied?
I'm good. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, I personally don't know whether it would be worse to be torn apart by dogs or converted into a tree that every time a branch fell off, I would feel like one of my limbs was being torn off. That would be a difficult choice.
But we're also looking at the brutality of nature, you know, what animals do to one another.
I
It's
have
food.
almost no fear of animals most of the time. I'm much more fearful of people.
But what they do to one another,
Well, but it's always limited. It's almost always really limited. Whereas people don't necessarily have any bounds once they get going.
yeah, it spreads.
Mhm.
It's a worse disease.
So, are we going to go on to the next canto?
Why not?
Okay, and we do have time, and we do have Italian readers. So let's quickly, Decio, you can go ahead and start on the Italian. And John, you can follow him, and I'll follow you, and then Decio will finish up at the end. So let me quickly put up Italian. Decio, John, Duncan. And anytime one of you other folks want to read some Italian, don't be shy.
Oh boy.
I start?
Yes.
Ok. Canto 14. Poi che la carità del natio loco mi strinse, raunai le fronde sparte e rendele a colui che era già fiocco. Indi venimo al fine ove si parte lo secondo giron dal terzo e dove si vede di giustizia orribile arte. A ben manifestar le cose nuove, dico che arrivamo ad una landa che dal suo letto ogni pianta rimuove. La dolorosa selva le ghirlanda intorno come il fosso tristo ad essa. Quive fermamo i passi a randa a randa. Lo spazio era un'arena arida e spessa, non d'altra foggia fatta che colei che fu da piedi Caton già soppressa. A vendetta di Dio, quanto tu dei esser temuta da ciascun che legge ciò che fu manifesto agli occhi miei. Da anime nudi vidi molte gregge che piangean tutto assai miseramente e parea posta lor diversa legge. Suppin giacea in terra alcuna gente, alcuni si sedea tutta raccolta e altra andava continuamente. Quella che giva intorno era più molta e quella men che giacea al tormento, ma più al duolo avea la lingua sciolta. Soprattutto il sabbion d'un cader lento piovean di fuoco dilatate falde, come di neve in Alpe senza vento. Quali Alessandro in quelle parti calde d'India vidi sopra il suo stuolo fiamme cadere infino a terra salde, perché ei provvide a scalpitar lo suolo con le sue schiere, acciò che lo vapore miei si stingeva mentre che era solo. Tale scendeva l'eternale ardore, onde la renna si ascendea con esca sotto foccile e doppiar lo dolore. Senza riposo mai era la tresca delle misere mani, or quinci, scontendo da sé l'arsura fresca. E cominciai. Maestro, tu che vinci tutte le cose, pur che demon duri, che al entrar della porta incontra uccisi, che a quel grande che non par che curri, lo scendio e giace dispettoso e torto, che sì che la pioggia non par che il maturi.
E quel medesimo che si fu accorto, io dimandavo il mio duca di lui, gridò, qual io fui vivo, tal son morto. Se Giove stanco il suo fabbro da cui, cruciato prese la fogoria aguta, onde l'ultimo dì percorso fui, o se li stanchi gli altri a muta, e mangibero alla faccina negra, chiamando buon Vulcano, aiuta, aiuta. siccome lo fece alla pugna di flegra, e mi saeti con tutta sua forza, non ne potrebbe aver vendetta allegra. Allora Duca mio parlò di forza, tanto che non l'avviasi forte udito, o capone un ciò che non s'ammorza. La tua superbia, sei tu più punito, nulla martiro for che la tua rabbia sarebbe al tuo furor dolor compito. Poesir voce a me con miglior labbia, dicendo que fu l'un di sette regi, casi se tebe, ed ebbi e par che li abbia, dio in disdegno, e poco par che priegi, ma come io dissi lui, i suoi dispetti, sono al suo petto assai, debiti fregi. Per mi vien dietro e guarda che non metti ancora i piedi nella arena arsiccia, ma sempre al basco, tien i piedi stretti. Next, please.
Facendo divenimo la spezia. Fuor della selva un picciol fiumocello, lo cui rossore ancor me raccapriccia. Quale de bulicame ecce ruscello, che patron, poi tra lo le peccatrici, tal per la reina giù s'angiava quello. La fondo suo de ambo le pendici, fattera pietra e margini di lato, perch'io m'accorsi che il passo era lici, tra tutto l'altro che t'ho dimostrato, porcia che noi entrammo per la porta, lo cui sogliare a nessuno è negato. Cosa non fada la tuoi occhi scorta, notabile com il presente rio, che sovra sé tutte fiammelle ammorta. Queste parole fuor de duca mio, perch'io pregai che mi larghisse il pasto, di cui larghito m'avia il disio. E messo mar siede un paese guastro, disse allora, che sapele Creta, sotto cui reghi fuggial monda castro, un montagna ve che gia fu lieta da acqua e di fronde, che si chiamo Ida, o è deserta come cosa vieta. Riela schielse gia per cuna fida del suo figliolo e per che la celario meglio quando piangia, vi faccia far la grida. Dentro da montre sta dritto un gran veglio, e tien vote la spalle in ver di miata, e Roma guarda come sua speglio. La sua testa è di finuro formata, e puro argento, son le braccia e il petto, poi è di rame infino alla forcata. Da inde in giusto e tutto ferro il letto, salvo che il destro piede è terracotta, e stan su quel più, chien sull'alto eretto. Decio, por favor.
Ok. Ciascuna parte, fuor che loro è rotta da una fessura che lagrime goccia, le quali accolte foran quella grotta. Lor corso in questa valle di roccia, vano Acheronte, Stige e Flaghetonta. Poi sen van giù per questa stretta doccia, infin là ove più non si dismonta, fanno cocitto. E qual sia quello stagno, tu lo vedrai, però chi non si conta, e io a lui. Se il presente rigagno si deriva così dal nostro mondo, perché ci appar pure a questo vivagno? Ed egli a me, tu sai che il luogo è tondo e tutto che tu sia venuto molto pur a sinistra, giù calando al fondo, non sei ancor per tutto il terchio volto, perché se cosa n'apparisce nova, non te adur maraviglia al tuo volto. E io ancora, maestro, ove si trova flegetonta, e lei te, chiede un taci all'altro, di che si fa desta piova. In tutte tue questioni certo mi piaci, rispose, ma il bolor dell'acqua rossa dovea ben solver l'una che tu facci. Le te vedrai, ma non fuori di questa fossa, là dove vanno l'anime a lavarsi quando la colpa pentuta è rimossa. Poi disse, ormai è tempo da scostarsi dal bosco, fa che di retro a me vegni, in margine fan via, che non sonarsi e sopra loro ogni vapor si spegne.
Muito bene. All right, now for the English. Because the charity of my native place constrained me, gathered I the scattered leaves and gave them back to him, who now was hoarse. Then we came to the confine, where disparted the second round is from the third, and where a horrible form of justice is beheld. Clearly to manifest these novel things, I say that we arrived upon a plain, from which its bed rejecteth every plant. The dolorous forest is a garland to it, all round about is a sad moat to that. There close upon the edge we stayed our feet. Next, please.
Soil was of an arid and thick sand, not of any another fashion made than that which by the feet of Cato once was pressed. Vengeance of God, oh how much outest thou for each one to be dreaded, who doth read that which was manifest upon mine eyes. Of naked souls beheld I many herds, who all were weeping very miserably, and over them seemed set the law diverse. Supine upon the ground some folk were lying, and some were sitting all drawn up together, and others went about continually. Those who were gone round were far the more, and those who were less who lay down to their torment, but had their tongues more loosened to lamentation. Over all the sand waste, with a gradual fall, were raining down dilated flakes of fire, as of the snow on Alp without a wind. Next, please.
As Alexander in those torrid parts of India beheld upon his host flames fall unbroken till they reached the ground, whence he provided with his phalanxes to trample down the soil, because the vapor better extinguished was while it was single. Thus was descending the eternal heat, whereby the sand was set on fire like tinder, beneath the steel for doubling of the dole. Without repose forever was the dance of miserable hands, now there, now here, shaking away from off them the fresh gleeds. Master, began I, thou who overcomest all things except the demons dire that issued against us at the entrance of the gate. Who is that mighty one who seems to heed not the fire and lieth lowering and disdainful, so that the rain seems not to ripen him? Next, please.
And he himself, who had discerned that I had asked my guide about him, cried, when I was alive, what I was alive, I am in death. Let Jove wear out his blacksmith, from whom in rage he seized the shining bolt he struck me with on that my final day. And though he weary all the others, one by one, at their black forge in Bello, shouting, help, good Vulcan, help, as once he did on the battlefield of Phlegra. And though he hurled his shafts at me with all his might, he still would have no joy at his revenge. Then my leader spoke with a vehemence I had not heard him use before. O Capaneus, because your pride remains unquenched, you suffer greater punishment. In your own anger lies your agony, a fitting torment for your rage. Next.
Then said,
I didn't have my turn.
oh, well, take your turn now then, Dee Dee, and I'll just go after you.
Lois, John, there's John, Dee Dee, and John, Jon.
Oh, perdóname.
Yeah. Okay. Then he turned round to me with bitter lips, saying, one of the 7 kings was he who Thebes besieged and held, and seems to hold God in disdain, and little seems to prize him. But as I said to him, his own despites are for his breast the fittest ornaments. Now follow me, and mind thou do not place as yet thy feet upon the burning sand, but always keep them close unto the wood. Next.
I guess that would be me then. Speaking no word, we came to where there gushes forth from the wood a little rivulet, whose redness makes my hair still stand on end. As from the bullock came springs the brooklet, the sinful woman later share among them, so downward through the sand it went its way. The bottom of it and both sloping banks were made of stone, and the margins at the side, whence I perceived that there the passage was. And all the rest which I have shown to thee, since we have entered in within the gate, whose threshold unto no one is denied, nothing has been discovered by thine eyes so notable as is the present river, which all the little flames above it quenches. These words were of my leader, whence I prayed him that he would give me largesse of the food, for which he had given me largesse of desire. Next, please. Dave.
Oh, okay. Did somebody miss, or do
No,
I?
I think
We're getting
we went on a
back in
turn here.
order.
Okay, we are. Okay, awesome. Here we go then. Far off amid the sea, there lies a waste country, said he, called Crete, beneath whose king once on a long lost time the world was chased. A mount is there named Ida. Many a spring laughed through its ferns of yore, and the valleys smiled, forsaken now, like some old mouldering thing. There Rhea once found safe cradling for her child, and to hide his cries lest danger come to pass, let fill the hills with Corybant clamors wild. A great old man stands under the mountain's mass. Towards Damietta he keeps his shoulders holden, and looks on Rome as though on a looking glass. His towers erect, and his head is purely golden. Of the silver fine his breast and arms and hands of brass, down to the cleft his trunk is molten, and thence to the ground his legs are iron bands, and save that the right foot's baked of earth and clay, and that is the foot upon which he chiefly stands. Man.
Each part, except the gold, is by a fissure, asunder cleft, that dripping is with tears, which gather together, perforate that cavern. From rock to rock they fall into the valley. Acheron, Styx, and Phlegethon they form. Then downward go along this narrow sluice, unto that point where is no more descending. They form a Cocytus. What that pool may be, thou shalt behold. So here 'tis not narrated. Next.
And I to him, if so the present runnel doth take its rise in this way from our world, why only on this verge appears it to us? And he to me, thou knowest the place is round, and notwithstanding thou hast journeyed fair, still to the left descending to the bottom. Thou hast not yet through all the circle turned. Therefore, if something new appear to us, it should not bring amazement to thy face. And I again, Master, where shall be found let and legiton, or one thou silent, and sayest the other is this rain is made. In all thy questions truly thou dost please me, replied he. But the boiling of the red water might well solve one of them thou makest. Thou shalt see Lethe, but outside this mold, there where the souls repair to lave themselves when sin repented of has been removed.
Are you going to finish it, Decio?
It's finished, no?
No, one more.
There's one more.
Oh, sorry. Then said he, it's time now to abandon the wood. Take heed that thou come after me. Away, away the marges make that are not burning, and over them our vapors are extinguished.
All right, great. Okay. And this is where we will begin next time. We'll do the same process. We'll read the Italian, then we'll read the English, and then we'll start reading the smaller chunks. Final comments, suggestions?
We read the Italian and English. Shouldn't we just go to our reading of the sections?
I would prefer to read them again.
Oh,
It might be
okay.
good
I think
after
so.
a week away to have that overview
Going to
again.
have to go.
Definitely.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. It won't take very long.
It's okay.
And
I'm eager to get to the discussion.
Remember.
Did you read the Barolini notes on this one yet, Dee Dee?
No, they may or
Okay.
may not be in the only volume I have.
Well, you can online.
Yeah,
can-
I don't have time.
You don't have time. Okay.
I do not have time.
Very interesting notes.
I'm
But if you
sure.
don't have time, you don't have time. Okay. Thank
Thank
you all
you.
very much.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
We will meet again by the river.
Okay, next week.
Okay.
Hopefully, see you
Thank
next
you.
week. Yeah,
Bye.
bye-bye.